know that you do quite a lot of an arranging. I actually, because you never really blow your own horn, no pun intended, but it was a perfect pun, about the arranging that you do. And as I was going through the CDs I haven't lost over the years and moves, I was going, like the Blue Swing one is one of my favorite, because you actually get some sort of pop tunes to a swing. I love it. And I played the heck out of it on every radio station that I worked with. But then I was going, oh, arrangement. Okay, so Dan basically did the whole thing, and I never knew that. So I should pay the compliment now before I forget yet again.
Thank you.
But when did you start arranging?
Wow. Well, high school. And it's funny how many, it's been commented on many times before, but it's strange, or I don't know, odd, how many trombone players have become arrangers.
I was,
And,
like Glenn Miller and
right?
Glenn Miller's first one, because he did arrangements for Ben Pollock, didn't he?
Good for you. That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And also for some Red Nichols dates in the late
Yeah.
20s. So Miller was just a working professional trombone player in New York.
Right.
And many people found out his talent for arranging, so he was also working as an arranger. I thought he played great trombone, by the way. He's not mentioned, but he was a terrific trombone
No.
player,
Well, he was such a good businessman that kind of eclipsed his
right.
other talents, and
Right.
in my opinion, anyway. But
and you think of Moonlight Serenade, that's his composition and his arrangement. That still, it's like a
it's beautiful,
iconic song of that era.
Yeah.
Nelson Riddle was a trombone player. Ray Conniff, if you remember the Ray Conniff singers. Ray Conniff played trombone for Artie Shaw and started arranging, wrote many arrangements.
Did you see Higginbotham do some too, or am I mistaken on that? I thought he had done a couple of, not the stuff with Buck Clayton, because that was mostly head arrangements, but I thought someone said that Higginbotham had done some arrangements for Benny at some point, but I haven't been able to find anything.
I don't think of him as an arranger. I don't know of Higginbotham writing arrangements per se.
Well, then maybe somebody, either my memory is faulty or something.
I'm not sure. Eddie Durham, however, another trombone player who also played guitar, arranged for Jimmy Lunsford. So many trombone players. But to answer your question, it was in high school, and I'd hang around with Brian Shaw, now my brother-in-law, the trumpet player I mentioned before. Oh, it says my internet connection is unstable. Well, so am I.
Join the club, internet.
Yeah, right. And Brian was getting interested in recording. And he was studying acoustics, and he would analyze the properties of rooms, and figure out if they would be good rooms for recording. He knew, and he still does, he knew everything to know about various microphones and their frequency responses. And we would listen to recordings, and I knew he was listening and trying to figure out how they set the microphones up in the room, and how big the room was, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, you can see the wheels turning.
And I would listen to the same recordings, and I would, like for Duke Ellington, I would think, how did he voice the saxes there? And Harry Carney, the Barry player, he isn't at the bottom of the section where you normally put the Barry. They have him up in the middle of the, Ellington put him up in the middle of the section.
Like in tenor range, Yeah,
and it gives the section a different quality, so Brian was listening for recording knowledge, and I was listening, trying to analyze arrangements. I'd listen to Fletcher. Brian and I were both nuts about Fletcher Henderson and Jimmy Lunsford. We were getting, in addition to the Blue Waters and Turk Murphy traditional stuff, and Jelly Roll Morton, of course, and Louis Armstrong's Hot Five, and Bix and his gang. We loved all of that stuff. But we were also starting to discover the swing era and the early big bands. And the things Henderson wrote for Benny Goodman's band, So I started arranging, trying to do that, I guess in high school. And it's followed me around ever since. I'll tell you, the pandemic, was 99.99% awful for everyone. But that 1/100th of a percent, it was good for me, because I sat here in my living room and just wrote. I wrote arrangements every day.
Alan's been doing that too, Vichet.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, and good. Get your other chops up, if that makes sense. And you know what I'm talking about. I do. I couldn't play, but I felt like I was staying musically engaged. Yeah. Well, and just kind of, like if you lose your sight temporarily, your other senses kind of just improve.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good analogy. Yeah.
To me, it's very similar, because, with the pandemic, it was the same thing. I was stuck at home because my doctor wouldn't let me go out and do anything. So I dove into music again, which since Saunders died, just been busy doing other stuff.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I know that you had told me a while back, because, and what makes me think of this is some of this, when you mentioned the swing bands and getting into that, I thought you had said, and you may not have said this, maybe Howard said it or somebody, that Jake Hanna was such a huge encouragement for you to essentially pick up from home or your home county or home counties and go to New York, completely opposite, to be able to do what? What did that accomplish for you, and how important was Jake in helping you to get the courage to do it?
Well, you probably heard that directly from Howard, but it would be indirectly from Jake to me through Howard. Howard Alden, the great guitarist who also is a virtuoso banjo player, for our listeners who may not be aware of Howard, has been one of my closest friends for, God, I met him when I was about 16. And he must have been about 14. Well, maybe I was 17, he was 14. I don't know. I have a few years on him. And I met him when he was playing banjo, and I thought, my God, this guy's a virtuoso, and he's so young. So we started hanging out and working around Southern California. And I don't exactly remember when Jake first heard us play, but Jake, he heard these two young guys interested in swinging, basically. And not too many musicians our age were interested in that. They were more interested in contemporary jazz,
if at all, in jazz.
So we were going back a few years to the guys who knew how to swing, and Jake took a liking to us. We were at Jake's house. Jake and later he married Denisa. So we had jam sessions, a couple of which were recorded at Jake's house.
I didn't know that.
And just not commercially, but informally, And I guess Jake encouraged Howard to move to New York. Well, he told both of us New York is where we belong, but I didn't take it seriously, really, or at that time. Howard and I had been working in Orange County around LA. And then Howard got a call from Red Norvo, the vibraphonist, to play a summer in 1981, I guess it was, in Atlantic City, in a trio situation, because Red was famous for working with just a trio: vibraphone, bass, and guitar. So the guitar is a very important part, when it's only three people. I mean, he's 33 1/3% of that group. And Red had initially called Jimmy Weibel, a very respected guitarist in LA. And Jimmy either didn't want to make the trip or couldn't make the trip for whatever reason. And Jimmy said, "Hey, Red, I have a student who will do a great job for you." And what I heard is that Red initially said, "Student, I don't want a student. I need somebody who can play." And Jimmy evidently told Red, "Look,
Howard's not.
Howard isn't an average student." And Jimmy said he has some stuff to learn, but he said, "Red, he's already playing things on the guitar I could never play." And Red said, "Well, if you think he's good enough, then give me his number." So Howard made this gig in Atlantic City with Red Norvo, and I guess Monday was their dark night. He worked 6 nights a week for the summer, but on Mondays he would take the train up to New York City, and got to sit in with. There were bands working 7 nights a week in New York City, So Monday nights there were clubs that had groups. Howard got to know Dick Sudhalter, a writer who played cornet, or either he's a writer who played cornet, or he's a cornet player who was a fantastic writer.
He likes to say cornet that likes to, player that writes. He wrote a biography on Wild Bill too.
Okay. But Dick was a great guy, and again, was very encouraging to Howard and me. But Howard got to know Sudhalter, got to know Ed Pulser at Eddie Condon's, got to know the late Eddie Davis, banjo player, and Cynthia Sayer.
Yeah.
And we was sitting in all over town. And he got back to Southern California after the summer. And he said, Dan, I'm moving to New York City.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, that's nice.
Nice.
2 weeks later, he called and he said, well, hey, Howard, hi, how are you? He said, oh, fine. I'm in my new apartment. I said, oh, you moved?
Wow.
And he said, oh yeah, I moved. I said, well, where are you? No, I'm thinking you moved across town in Hollywood or something,
yeah.
And he said, well, I'm on 2nd Avenue at 78th Street.
Well, once Howard makes up his mind, he doesn't let grass grow.
Yeah, and I said, what part of LA is that in? He said, LA, no. He said, I'm in Manhattan. I said, Manhattan? And it was so funny. He said, well, I told you I was going to move. And I said,
what's your problem, Dan?
That was 2 weeks ago. He said, well, I moved. And then he started in on me and he said, look, he said, you're just spinning your wheels in Southern California. Come to New York. You can stay with me till you get a place of your own. And he said, you can actually make a living playing jazz here. And he said, you can play the kind of jazz you like.
Nice.
So it was really at Howard's behest that I moved to New York. And when it looked like I was going to stay there, I sent for Laura. I called her and Laura flew out. We got married in New York City. Andrew was born at New York Hospital in Manhattan. So he's a native New Yorker. I tell him he can be proud of that.
Yeah.
Some of the finest people I've met have been New Yorkers.
Yeah.
And people in New Jersey, And Dave Frischberg wrote a song, Do You Miss New York? And I really do miss New York.
Yeah.
That was a great experience. And doors just suddenly opened up for me.
Yeah, because it seems like, wasn't it not long after that Woody called you, or?
Woody Allen? Yeah. Well, he didn't call personally, but
or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I was subbing with the band. Dick Drywitz was their regular trombone player, real good trombone player. Dick and Barbara, great couple. But I would sub occasionally. And then Woody was getting ready, jumping to 1996. He was getting ready for that European tour that he made. And I was called to play trombone. So I got to do that tour with him. But I didn't know him. Well, nobody who knows Woody Allen that well. I can't say. I sure can't say I do, But that was a very interesting tour. And playing with, I mentioned Cynthia Sayer, the late Eddie Davis, great trumpet player and a great guy, Simon Wettenhall on trumpet. John Gill, who played with Turk Murphy's band. John was on drums. And Greg Cohen, who now teaches at a university in Berlin, was the bass player.
Oh, okay. I was wondering where I haven't seen his name in a while. And
then Woody, of course, on clarinet. It was a very good kind of a earthy New Orleans style jazz band.
Yeah. Well, he has a healthy respect for that kind of music. I mean, I know that, well, Howard, he hired Howard for what was that?
Sweet and Low Down.
Yeah, I have the soundtrack, but I don't think I even watched the movie.
So when you're watching Sean Penn,
you're hearing
the
Howard
guitar on the screen, you're listening to Howard Alden actually play the guitar.
Yeah.
And he said Sean Penn was amazing. He was just naturally gifted at music. He caught on to he was actually playing guitar by the time
Howard
finished the tutoring. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I know
Howard
that
said he was brilliant.
Warren had coached Richard Gere on fingerings and stuff for Cotton Club, which you were on too.
That's right.
I'm right.
I played valve trombone.
I don't think Gere was playing trumpet by the time, or cornet by the time that was over, or was he?
Well, I heard that he played cornet in high school in a school band, so he did have some previous experience with it.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think it's Big Butter and Eggman. One of the scenes, it's actually Richard Gere playing on the soundtrack.
Oh.
For however briefly, but he actually did play a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. You had done a children's album on Arbors, I think, Becky and something else. And I used to play that for him all the time.
Oh.
And I was a very proud aunt when he started singing one of the tunes a few years later. And I was like, and I almost called you at that point, Dad, listen.
Oh, I wish you had.
But yeah, what was that? Oh, Being a Bear. I remember that.
Right.
Yeah.
Being a Bear.
How did that one come about, that album?
Through Rebecca Kilgore, who had befriended a Canadian couple, David and Maxine Shacker in Toronto, who I owe a phone call. And David, I think he was in advertising, but he wrote a script for a feature-length, well, an animated feature, full-length animated feature, called The Jazz Bears.
Oh, okay.
And he had this whole idea of a jazz band comprised of bears who live in the forest, you know.
All in Disney.
Right. And they're the inspiration for another group of younger bears who were in high school. And they're kind of tutoring these younger bears, and they get into all kinds of trouble, you know, and the younger bears do, and the older bears have to bail them out. And there are lessons in life. And I read the script and I loved it. And in fact, with my connection with Woody Allen, I contacted the office hoping to get Woody involved in it. And it just didn't happen. You know? I still have the script. I still think it's a wonderful script. It just never got off the ground. But during this time we were talking about it, David had composed lyrics for 4 or 5 songs. And he asked me if I would write the music to his lyrics. And, you know, I don't remember that I'd ever done that before, him asking me to do this. And they were just typewritten words on a sheet of paper, you know, and David is not, he's musical, but not formally trained musically.
Right. Yeah.
So it was up to me to give these lyrics some kind of shape or structure and form and turn them into some kind of I'll say a jazzy song that we could play and that would be singable, you know. So we did that. And then when we had 4 or 5 songs together, either Rebecca or I approached Matt Domber and Rachel at Arbor's Records and said, we have this project. So the CD was really to try and bring attention to the idea of the full-length feature.
Right.
And I'm still sorry to this day it never got made, you know.
Well, never say never.
That's true.
You never say never.
If I win the lottery, it'll get made.
Yeah, there you go. Keep praying.
It's a great script. It has humor. It has pathos. It's poignant. It has some lessons in life, you know.
Yeah.
And it has some great jazz references for jazz fans.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, and I would play it on the air every so often. When I was working for the public radio station here in Monterey, there were little kids that would always call it because it was a Saturday morning show. And because me as a kid, one of the things I loved was the Jungle Book album.
Oh, right. Sure.
You know, I mean, the only time I ever remember being starstruck was meeting Phil Harris because Baloo the Bear's voice was coming out of this man's face. And I was just,
yeah.
But little kids would call in and request that. And once your album came out, I think Matt must have sent it to me. Maybe you did, but I'm pretty sure Matt sent it to me.
Maybe.
And I started playing it on the air. So these little 4 and 6-year-olds that would call up making requests of sometimes some really hip stuff and sometimes Jungle Book, which was hip too, but you know what I mean,
right.
Would start requesting some of the songs on your album. And then
nice.
I go, oh, well, that's my copy. I don't have it with me. I'm sorry. And so they would call me on the carpet the next week if I forgot to bring it. So
gee. Oh.
So it wasn't just my nephew.
Oh, thanks for sharing that with me.
There was a 4-year-old in Boulder Creek that loved you.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. You know, I should mention Tina Seward, who was the cartoonist who drew Well, I'm remembering how this came about. Maxine Shacker at the time ran a school for animators back before computer generated animation, when there were actual men and women, you know. And one of the students, I guess, was just fooling around and knew that David Shacker was a very knowledgeable, and is a very knowledgeable jazz fan, by the way. And I guess Tina was drawing some bears with musical instruments. And Maxine wandered by her desk and said, "What are you working on?" She said, "Oh, I'm just fooling around with my jazz bears." So I think that's how the idea came about.
Yeah.
So I got to give Tina credit for that. Tina and David and Maxine Shacker. And gee, I'm thinking about that recording session. It's sad. Spanky Davis, who's gone, he played trumpet. Jim Galloway.
Oh, that's right. Galloway was on that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's on soprano. And the late John Sheridan,